Just because the 3.2 update as well as the Aquatics species packs are out of the door doesn't mean that the gravy train, that is Stellaris development, stops. No! Even though the previous expansions have only been launched about a week ago, the developers have already teased what they will be working on next. And whether or not this is coming from the custodian team or from the main development team, it's nice for us to know where we are headed post this expansion and essentially into the 3.3 or even maybe the 3.4 scenarios. Now, one of the things that the developers have teased in the past is a Unity rework. And essentially what that would mean is that the Empire sprawl system, as well as the way Unity works as it works right now, is in the following way. Of course, you have your Empire sprawl, and it works by having it tied to districts. It is extremely likely that this system is going to get replaced in the future by something new that is more Unity orientated. Unity has always been one of those resources that was exceedingly powerful in the early game, especially if you got enough of it, because it allowed you to get your traditions relatively quickly, and more importantly, get your oh so useful ascensions. Now, in the future, what we can expect to see is this particular system, the Empire Sprawl, all completely being removed from the game and having that being supplemented by using Unity as a resource. One of the things that the developers have talked about is using Unity to mitigating Unity upkeep. So essentially what you would have there is to have a reduction to research cost penalty and all of that stuff, essentially in this particular category of Empire Sprawl. And how they're looking to implement that is not particularly clear, but it is something that they're playing around with, which ties into the next thing that they're kind of sort of teasing, and that is internal politics. For the longest time, the one thing that I've really wanted from Stellaris is internal politics. Because let's be honest, internal politics is not something that really has a lot of focus in Stellaris as a game. You've got your stuff on your planets and stuff is kind of moving around, but all of the tension comes from outside of your empire. Sure, there has been some experimenting with, for instance, the Manifestati event, which is a kind of sort of special faction that can spawn within the game, but not much has been done from that point onwards. Something that the developers are currently looking at is to add what is referred to as a disaster system. Something that's very similar to what you will find in the game Europa Universalis. And some of the things that can happen using the disaster system is the following. They're currently referring to it as situations in Stellaris, by the way. Some of the things that can happen in EU4 is Cossack independence, where a certain area of the map will try to become independent from your empire. Civil wars can break up. Aristocracy coup can happen. A certain type of faction can rise up against the masses. North versus South and all of this sort of thing, which really paves the way, at least if this disaster/situation system is going to get introduced in Stellaris, to have a proper internal politics system. And the only time I've seen something like this in Stellaris has been in the more events mod, or as well as the dynamic political events mod, which is available on the workshop. I highly recommend for you to go and check that out. But basically what it boils down to is that we can have all of these interesting things happening within our empire, something that we haven't seen at all, which is an extremely exciting thing to see in the near future. And I really hope that we're going to see more of this, because in the end, Stellaris is all about discovering, and we have discovered quite a lot out there, but not a lot on the inside of us. Discovering what is in our hearts, so to speak. Regardless of that, there is also, of course, the AI, which has developed quite nicely over the last few months, with improvements being brought in across the line. And, of course, with the Unity rework coming in the future, it means that we're going to be seeing some more adjustments there as well to make sure that the system works nicely. Then, of course, there is the buffing the backlog, something the custodians will be working on in order to improve existing expansions and existing systems. The things that they're going to be focusing on are Nemesis and Necroids. Now, Necroids was already touched upon previously with one of the civics being boosted and making sure that you can now resurrect dead creatures in space. But Nemesis, what could we expect there? Well, first of all, one of the big things that we can expect to be changing, or at least to be adjusted, is the espionage system as well as the operations. Operations are incredibly underwhelming at the moment and a little bit undercooked. So maybe it's a good idea for the team to have a deeper look at the espionage system and bring it up to spec a little bit better than what is done in the past. Now, the development team has had a lot of feedback from the community in general and have taken all of that and put it onto a giant pile, probably put it on fire, and the ashes from what remained, all the solid pieces they'll probably try to inject. Overall, none of this is really good, except for steel technology. That's pretty much it. Sure, gather information is nice, but if you're gonna stomp in there anyway, then yeah, you're not gonna run into too many problems. Sure, information is nice if you want to know about, say, diplomatic pacts and that sort of thing, is really good, but still, it's not really all that consequential in the large scheme of things. But yeah, more updates will be coming to Stellaris in the future, and I'm really looking forward to that, whilst at the same time also looking to some hot fixes for Stellaris 3.2 and seeing where all of that stuff goes, because apparently there's a couple of problems here and there that may need to be resolved into the very near future. But yeah, Stellaris development is looking really bright, especially if they're going to start focusing on internal production of the diplomacy system, as well as events that can happen within your empire with uprisings, revolts, maybe even some political scheming. Who knows? It's a very exciting time indeed. What do you think? Internal diplomacy? Internal events? Is this something that you've been looking for? Because I definitely have been. Make sure that you comment below on what would you like to see happening within your empire. Would you like to see the masses rise up to reach for the means of production only to being slapped down by the strong hand of the authoritarian state? Or would you like to see some aristocrats trying to take control of a planet and building their own fiefdom in a little corner of your empire, or maybe even a sector if they're going to start to touch upon that? Let me know what you think down below, because I'm really looking forward to what sort of ideas you have about these sort of systems. We're going to go and wrap things up here. As I mentioned, situation system, looking pretty excited. I hope you are too about that as well. But we're going to have to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my patrons for making today's video possible. And for the future, make sure that you take good care of yourselves. And as always, keep your enemies close, but keep your internal diplomacy even closer.